The metal cuffs bite into Victoria Taylor's wrists as the patrol car door slams shut, the echo lingering longer than the pain. She doesn't flinch. She doesn't argue. She doesn't plead. That calm unnatural to the men watching her is what unsettles them most. Officer Harris tightens the cuffs just enough to draw blood, muttering something about attitude, while Captain Wilson looms nearby, confident in the power of the badge and the certainty that tonight will end like all the others. Another driver questioned. Another voice silenced. Another lesson taught. What they don't know, what they never even consider, is that they've just arrested the wrong woman at exactly the wrong time. Victoria memorizes everything. Harris's badge number, Wilson's posture, the smug tilt of his head, the way authority has made them careless. The cruiser pulls away from the checkpoint, lights flashing not as protection, but as intimidation. 2 hours earlier, she had driven through these same streets without a second thought. Westfield Heights fading behind her, wealthier neighborhoods ahead, and then the blue lights. A checkpoint, routine they called it. Her window was already down, license ready, voice steady. One simple question, what is the checkpoint for, was all it took to change everything. The moment her address was read aloud, the shift happened. Tone hardened, smiles appeared, backup was called, authority flexed. She had cited her rights calmly, professionally, never raising her voice. That composure was mistaken for defiance. And defiance, in their world, demanded punishment. Now the cruiser hums down empty streets as Wilson explains obstruction charges like he's reciting a grocery list. Harris laughs in the front seat. They believe this is control. They believe this is power. Victoria leans her head back, eyes half closed, listening, recording, cataloging. Hidden beneath the lining of her jacket, a military-grade device captures every word, every threat, every violation. The watch on her wrist quietly transmits her location to systems far beyond this city. The officers think the night belongs to them. They think this ends in a holding cell and a warning to know your place. But time is already working against them. Somewhere else, phones are ringing, screens are lighting up, protocols are activating. Victoria Taylor doesn't need to announce who she is. She has no intention of saving herself early. Tonight isn't about escape, it's about exposure. And in exactly 43 minutes, the illusion of authority these men rely on is going to collapse, loudly. The fluorescent lights inside the station buzz overhead as Victoria is led through processing, the sound grating against the quiet confidence she maintains. The booking officer barely looks at her until he reads her address, then pauses, eyes narrowing just slightly. Westfield Heights. Something unspoken passes between the officers nearby. Wilson and Harris laugh openly now, comfortable, unguarded. They speak the way men do when they think no consequences exist. Another one who thought she was special, Harris says loudly, making sure she hears it. Victoria says nothing. Silence, she knows, often invites people to reveal far more than words ever could. Her belongings are dumped into an evidence bag. Wallet, keys, phone, they miss the communicator. The fingerprints are taken, black ink staining her skin, her name typed into the system without care. When she asks for her phone call, the officer gestures lazily toward the wall phone, already assuming it will be a lawyer or a family member begging for help. Instead, Victoria dials a number from memory. Her voice never wavers. Authorization code, oversight protocol, location transmitted. On the other end, there is no surprise, only confirmation. Response team deploying. Timeline established. She hangs up before anyone can ask questions. Around her, the station continues its routine, unaware that it has just become the center of something much larger. A polished man in an expensive suit enters, confidence radiating from him like cologne. Councilman Edward Bennett. He peers through the glass at Victoria with mild disinterest, asking Wilson if this is another checkpoint resistor. Bennett's approval of the program is no secret. The checkpoints are his legacy, public safety on paper, control in practice. Victoria is escorted to a holding cell, the door slamming shut with finality. She sits upright on the cold bench, eyes on the clock. Every second matters. 43 minutes isn't a guess, it's a promise. Outside the cell, Bennett speaks freely, confident his words will never matter. He wants examples made. He wants compliance enforced. Victoria listens to it all, recording everything. The irony isn't lost on her. This station believes it operates above scrutiny, protected by local politics and silence. They don't realize the very systems they use to intimidate others have just documented their undoing. As the minutes tick by, officer, walk past her cell without concern. To them, she's already categorized, already dismissed. But the truth is moving faster than they are. Somewhere beyond these walls, engines are starting, orders are being issued, files are being opened that haven't seen daylight in years. Victoria doesn't smile. She doesn't need to. This was never about her comfort. It was about proving a pattern, and tonight, the pattern has been captured in full. The interrogation room smells like stale coffee and control. Captain Wilson enters with practiced confidence, tossing Victoria's belongings onto the metal table like trophies. He speaks slowly, deliberately, assuming intimidation will loosen her resolve. He talks about respect for authority, about how checkpoints keep the city safe, about people who don't know their place. Victoria invokes her right to counsel. He ignores it. He circles the room instead, performing dominance for an audience that doesn't exist. When he pulls out her military identification, he laughs, tossing it onto the table as if it's a cheap prop. "Nice fake," he says, already planning the additional charge. Victoria remains still. She knows this moment well. Power, when unchecked, always grows careless. Wilson's phone buzzes. His tone changes when he reads the screen, irritation slipping into something closer to uncertainty. The door opens and Detective David Morales steps inside. Younger than the others, sharper eyes. He takes in the scene quickly, the cuffs, the posture, the ignored request for counsel. When he examines the military ID, something shifts. He knows the markers, the security features, the insignia. His voice is careful when he speaks, but firm. "Captain, this identification is real." Wilson scoffs, dismissing him, but confidence begins to crack. Morales presses further, citing procedure, policy, violations stacking up rapidly. That's when Bennett enters, his authority filling the room. He dismisses Morales's concerns with political ease, insisting the checkpoint program is protected by ordinance, protected by him. Victoria watches the exchange silently. This is the fracture point. Morales sees it now, the ethical line drawn clearly in front of him. He can step back into safety or stand in truth. The ringing phone interrupts them all. Wilson answers, listens, and goes pale. The call wasn't from a lawyer. It wasn't from a local office. It was from the Pentagon. They knew her name, her rank, her location. Bennett's composure falters for the first time. The room feels smaller now. Wilson stumbles over explanations. Morales straightens instinctively, military respect kicking in before he can stop it. Victoria finally speaks, her voice calm and precise. This isn't about her arrest. It's about systematic civil rights violations. Discriminatory enforcement, constitutional abuse. The words hang heavy in the air. Outside the station, engines grow louder. Bennett tries to regain control, suggesting apologies and quiet resolution. But quiet is no longer an option. This wasn't an accident. It was a test. and the system failed it spectacularly. When the military vehicles arrive, the illusion collapses completely. Uniformed investigators move through the station with quiet efficiency, securing records, seizing systems, cutting through local authority like it was never there to begin with. Colonel Jackson enters the room and salutes Victoria without hesitation. The gesture alone redraws every power dynamic Bennett thought he controlled. Wilson looks smaller now. Harris can't meet anyone's eyes. Morales unlocks the cuffs himself, his hands steady but his expression heavy with vindication and regret. Bennett attempts to speak politics, misunderstandings, public safety, but no one is listening anymore. Evidence boards fill the conference room. Maps light up with checkpoint placements that tell a story too consistent to deny. Arrest statistics spike along racial lines. Internal emails surface, quotas outlined, neighborhoods named. Audio recordings play back words spoken casually, cruelly, with the assumption of secrecy. Westfield cars get the full treatment. Find a reason. The room is silent as truth stacks layer upon layer. Victoria stands at the head of the table, not as a victim, but as an investigator concluding a long operation. This wasn't reactive. It was deliberate. Months of data, complaints buried, citizens intimidated, lives disrupted under the banner of safety. Morales contributes his internal files, risking everything he had left in the department. His brother's wrongful detention becomes one story among hundreds. The pattern is undeniable. Bennett's political armor finally shatters when financial records appear, developer contributions, property acquisition plans, pressure tactics disguised as policing. The checkpoints weren't about crime. They were about displacement, control, profit. Federal prosecutors take notes. Agents step forward. Bennett is informed, calmly, that he is now under federal investigation, no speeches, no cameras, just consequence. As dawn breaks outside, the station that once felt untouchable is transformed into a command center for accountability. Officers are separated, phones are confiscated. The city's narrative is no longer theirs to control. Victoria watches it all without triumph. Justice isn't about satisfaction, it's about correction. Systems don't change through outrage alone, they change through evidence. And tonight, the evidence is overwhelming. The fallout moves fast and then all at once. Within days, indictments follow. The checkpoint program is suspended, then permanently dismantled. Convictions tied to unconstitutional stops are flagged for review. Some are overturned. Records are cleared. Compensation discussions begin. The headlines focus on Bennett, on Wilson, on the spectacle of power unraveling. But Victoria's focus is elsewhere. At a congressional hearing weeks later, she sits beneath bright lights in full uniform, 4 stars visible, speaking not with anger but with precision. She explains the methodology, the patterns, the consequences of unchecked authority. Lawmakers listen differently when the evidence is undeniable. New oversight measures are proposed. Data transparency becomes mandatory. The system begins slowly to correct itself. Morales testifies too. His voice shakes once, then steadies. His career shifts not sideways but upward into a role where integrity isn't punished. Back in Westfield Heights, life begins to feel less tense. Checkpoints vanish. People drive without bracing themselves. At a community meeting, a grandmother thanks Victoria quietly, explaining how her grandson got his future back. Victoria tells her the truth. She didn't save anyone. She revealed what was already happening. Change followed because it could no longer hide. On her return to the Pentagon, new reports cross her desk. Similar patterns, different cities, same tactics. The work isn't finished, it's just expanding. Victoria doesn't seek recognition, she seeks consistency. Equal protection isn't a slogan, it's a standard, and standards only matter when they're enforced. Months later, oversight teams operate nationwide using the Greenfield model as a template. Complaints once ignored now trigger reviews. Data once hidden is published. The message is clear. Authority without accountability will be challenged. Victoria meets with younger service members who report similar experiences, reassuring them that speaking up matters. Each report strengthens the system. Each pattern identified prevents another abuse. Morales sends updates from his new role, cases reopened, reforms implemented, trust slowly rebuilt. The ripple effect continues outward, touching places Victoria will never visit, people she will never meet. That's how justice works when it's done right, quietly, relentlessly. She reflects often on the night it began, not with bitterness but clarity, the cuffs, the laughter, the certainty those men had that nothing would happen. They weren't evil, they were unchecked, and unchecked power is always dangerous. Victoria prepares for her next briefing, knowing there will always be resistance, always denial. But systems exposed rarely return to darkness unchanged. The map on the screen glows with indicators, not of failure but of opportunity. Every red flag is a chance to intervene before harm becomes routine. This is the work, not dramatic arrests, not headlines, but persistence. In quieter moments, Victoria thinks about why she never revealed her rank that night. Why she didn't end it immediately. The answer is simple. Most people can't. Most people don't have that shield. Systems should work without privilege. Rights shouldn't depend on who you are. That belief is what carried her through decades of service and what guided this operation from the start. She knows the story will be told and retold, simplified, dramatized. But the truth remains intact beneath it all. Accountability happened because evidence met courage, because silence broke, because someone decided that documenting injustice mattered more than avoiding discomfort. And tomorrow, someone else will make that choice too. That's how progress actually happens. And if this story held your attention, if it made you uncomfortable, reflective, or empowered, then it did exactly what it was meant to do. Stories like this aren't just entertainment. They're reminders that systems can fail, that authority must be questioned, and that accountability is never automatic, it's demanded. If you want more powerful, voice-only stories that keep you listening from the first word to the last, make sure you support this channel right now. Hit the like button so this story reaches more people. Subscribe so you never miss our next upload. And turn on notifications because the next story might challenge what you think you know even more. We tell stories that stay with you long after the sound fades. Stories about justice, resilience,